Hello, I'm Dale Harris, and today I'm going to be talking about books and publications for guitarists. The majority of what I'm going to be talking about is applicable to classical guitarists, Spanish guitarists, but some of it will be applicable to fingerstyle players. Now, as you're developing your right hand finger technique, you'll need pieces and books and the rest of it as resources. So this is a good video for people who don't really know what books to buy, and maybe you read Amazon reviews or something and try and figure out, you know, what the best books to buy are. So I'm hoping that this will be a shortcut for you. My first book advice is for classical guitarists, and it's a book that's got lots and lots of different composers and anything from simple music, and when I say simple I mean sort of grade 1 type level, all the way through to grade 8 plus. So the book is called World's Favourite Solos for Classic Guitar, and it's edited by Harvey Vinson. Composers such as Fernando Sor, Francisco Tárrega, Giuliani, Carcassi, Carulli, and there's Johann Sebastian Bach, some Mozart, Albanese, simple studies and simple pieces, and then you get grade 2, grade 3, grade 4 type pieces. You get the Saw, a few of the Saw studies, and then through to the variations on the theme of Mozart by Fernando Saw, Asturias by Albanese, and Recuerdos de la Alhambra by Francisco Tárrega. A whole variety of pieces. So with that, you could, as you go up through your levels, it would be a useful resource. Then you can try a piece out. If you don't quite have the technique for it, you can work on a few other things, and then you can come back to it. As I did when I was much younger, when I was studying. It was one of my early books, and it was a fantastic resource. Be aware though that the fingerings in them are slightly obscure, and you'll end up, I know what it's like when you're a student. The fingerings that are in the books, the fingering suggestions, you don't know when you're starting out which are good fingerings and which are the bad ones, and then you wonder why you can't play a particular passage. My best advice for that would be to watch videos. There's plenty of videos of professionals playing the same pieces on YouTube, in concerts and the rest of it. So I would advise looking. And then if you have a particular problem with a passage, then see what a professional does. And if you find you're down in the 2nd position and you see a professional's playing the same passage in the 7th position or something, then you can explore the fingering around that. Or maybe you can get, if you're studying with a teacher, maybe you can get your teacher to go through that with you. So that's the first book anyway. Another good book is by Frederick Node, and it's called Solo Guitar Playing. And now there's a book 1 and a book 2. Book 1 is easier, and then there's book 2, which is more advanced. And within those books there are ideas for right hand finger picking type patterns, left hand exercises, theory lessons, the layout of the guitar, the fretboard. So anything from technical information to lessons in how to play particular types of pieces. And then when you get the really advanced pieces, there are actually lessons within there. There are usually 4 or 5 bullet points of areas to watch out for and suggestions how to work around those passages. The fingerings in the book are generally pretty good. They're not all perfect, but they're near enough. So in your early days of playing, then it's a perfectly good book series to use and to study from. So that's Solo Guitar Playing Book 2 by Frederick Node. Now, I personally believe that every guitarist should have some Johann Sebastian Bach in their possession, some of the music. Now, Bach wrote quite a bit of music for the lute, and he wrote music for what was called the lute harpsichord, so a sort of harpsichord or some sort of keyboard instrument that had gut-type strings. So it sounded like a lute, or it sounded like like we would expect a classical guitar almost to sound like now. So he wrote quite a bit of music, and many of those pieces are advanced. But it's a good aspiration, even if you can just play a few bars of his music, because it's very, very interesting, and the fingering combinations are very, very, they're quite unique. There is one particular edition that I didn't study from this, but there's Frank Koontz, and his book is pretty reasonable, and you'll find the fingerings in there are pretty reasonable as well. Professionals should note that when you play any edition of public domain music, if you play someone else's arrangement, you have to credit them. So you'll find that most guitarists will actually go back to the sources of the lute originals, and they will look at, because these pieces were played on a Baroque lute, which I would imagine would have been 13-course lute, which involves the bass strings. Now, if you've seen my other videos, you'll see me playing the lute, and you'll see that my bass strings are tuned effectively to a scale, and you let them ring open as you're playing the Bach. So you hear these very, very low notes, and they're impossible to play on a standard classical guitar. Therefore, that's where the area of arrangement comes in. And that's why it's a good idea to play your own arrangement, because if someone chose a particular octave to put a bass note, then you don't necessarily have to play that bass note. That you can move it somewhere else, or you can omit it altogether. Harmony in Bach is implied most of the time, so you can move things around. But again, this comes with experience. So I think that the suites are good. There'll be 4 main lute suites: the Little Prelude and Fugue, and the Prelude, Fugue and Allegro. So yes, I suggest that you have some Bach in your collection. Another very, very good resource will be the studies by Fernando Saw. Now, at one time we used to have the Segovia arrangement of, I think it was 24 studies. And incidentally, John Williams, one of his early recordings was that very, very set of pieces. And you can hear Segovia playing them. Fantastic pieces in themselves, but if you get the complete studies, Chanterelle have published a complete collection. So that's Fernando Saw Complete Studies. You'll find that there's good right-hand workouts, left-hand workouts, scales and chords and the rest of it. It's a very, very good set of pieces to play and to put into your as your technique repertoire. Now, Mauro Giuliani, 24 studies for guitar by Schott Publishing. Those 24, I know some professionals still swear by them, so a very, very good idea to play those pieces. And they start off quite simple and they end up quite complicated, but they do cover a variety of techniques: chords, arpeggios, scales, and legatos. In other words, hammer-ons and pull-offs. So there's Giuliani's 24 studies. Now, a good resource for just pure technique and trying things out and speeding things up is by Scott Tennant, and it's a book called Pumping Nylon, and it's become a more recent classic for guitarists. Every conceivable exercise and workout is in there. So if you're a finger picker, fingerstyle player, even if you're not a pure classical player, there are some very, very interesting resources within that book. So I would very much recommend checking that one out. One of my favourite set of studies is by Villa-Lobos, published by Eschig. It was originally published 12 etudes, and in other words 12 studies. Villa-Lobos played the guitar. He was a very, very gifted guitarist, in actual fact. He had a very, very good vision for guitar music. His style goes between sort of a Brazilian rhythmic style to a very, what sounds in some regards as a very serious, almost at times atonal type style. It's not atonal music. He just gets very fruity with his harmonies, which makes me think he was a very gifted composer. I certainly think he was aware of what was going on in Europe at the time, what with the Second Viennese School and the atonal movement from things from Stravinsky and Bartók. His studies are a phenomenal achievement in the guitar world. So if you are a classical guitarist, or maybe even a flamenco guitarist, these are essential pieces really. They cover all aspects, again, of technique, from arpeggios to scales to legatos, and contrapuntal playing, in other words, multi-voice playing, and playing with atmosphere and with space, and playing fast, in like allegro, fast passages and the rest of it. And he'll kill you with the barres, left-hand barres. So Villa-Lobos definitely would be one of my big recommendations. Another one of my essential books is by Agustin Barrios. And there's a book called The Guitar Works of Agustin Barrios Mangere. And it was edited by Rico Stover, who died, as I'm recording this, only a few days ago. He set about editing and transcribing, in some instances, direct from Barrios's records. So he saw the original scores and transcribed some alternatives that he heard, either Barrios improvising or that he'd prepared around his own compositions. There are 3 books in that series. They're all fantastic and all worthy of owning. And there are more modern editions now, but that was a very good book. And the fingerings were reasonable, pretty good, not always worth following. If you can find some other alternatives, then there are certainly some other ways of playing that music other than the way that it's fingered. But yes, 3 books of Barrios, and you can't go wrong when it comes to... Barrios was a player, guitarist, and he had a phenomenal technique. As obviously Villa-Lobos could really play. Fernando Sor was obviously a brilliant player, and Mauro Giuliani was a brilliant player also. And Barrios is a very, very flamboyant. He had this amazing style, and it comes across in his compositions. And again, a mixture of his influences. La Catedral is very Bach and very Baroque influenced. And then you get Paraguayan dances. And in some instances you get these sort of Viennese waltzes. And you get beautiful romantic pieces. There's a La Ultima Canción, which is, if you know Recuerdos del Alhambra by Tarrega, then you'll know that La Ultima Canción is another very, very good tremolo type study. So that's the guitar works of Agustin Barrios Mangere, edited by Rico Stover. Now, if you want any other kind of resources, you may want scale books, you may want books that explain about arpeggios and other things, but pretty much those books, if you have some money to spend and you're thinking, or you know a guitarist who's studying and maybe they're starting out and they want some books and you think, yes, they're going to be a guitarist for life, They are fantastic resources for all students and even professionals. So I heartily recommend those. Anyway, that's all from me. If you enjoyed this video and want to hear more useful information about guitar-related matters, then please feel free to subscribe, and you can hit the bell for updates. So anyway, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you soon.